From their humble origins in research labs and universities, video games have grown into a multi-billion-dollar industry, bringing in more global revenue than movies, music, and all American professional sports leagues combined. As with every artistic medium, video games have evolved over the years, and just like literature or the visual arts, individual games can be identified with specific time periods and artistic movements. One can immediately tell the difference between a video game made in the 1970s from one made in the 1980s, or even tell the difference between a game made in 2011 from one made in 2019. Video games are a new medium, having only existed for about 70 years, and only being culturally relevant for about 50. As such, we can, from their inception, identify practically every major shift in the medium, the incremental improvements to graphics and gameplay, the changes in design philosophy, the rise and fall of major trends. And, convenient to our analysis, the biggest trends seem to occur on a decade-by-decade basis. Join me then, as we take a journey through the decades of gaming. It is impossible to say with absolute certainty which video game was the first. To start, the term video game is rather vague, with much debate as to what that term even means. We all have a baseline, intuitive understanding of what constitutes a video game. We certainly know one when we see one. But if forced to define the criteria by which something qualifies as a video game, we soon get bogged down in a whole host of minor considerations. For example, is an AI opponent necessary for something to be considered a video game? Do we need to be able to play against the computer, or do strictly two-player experiences qualify? What about the display? A video game, as the name suggests, is a game with a video element. But what exactly is a video element? Surely a TV screen or a computer monitor counts. But what about a backlit LCD screen, like those found on the Game & Watch or those Tiger electronic handhelds from the 1990s? And what if there is no display? Early computers conveyed data through printouts and blinking lights, but even so, they were able to play games like chess and checkers and tic-tac-toe. Do those count as video games? And does the first video game actually need to exist? All the way back in 1947, a pair of physicists named Thomas T. Goldsmith and Ethel Ray Mann filed a patent for something called a cathode ray tube amusement device, which would have played rather similarly to Missile Command. Might that qualify as the world's first video game? The YouTuber Ahoy made an excellent video about this very subject. Please see the link in the description. In it, he clearly lays out the criteria he feels has to be met for something to qualify as a video game. By his own admission, these criteria are somewhat arbitrary and open to debate. According to him, the first verifiable video game is 1952's Drafts, or Checkers if you're American, developed by British computer scientist Christopher Strachey. Strachey was a colleague of Alan Turing, a name you may be familiar with. During World War II, Turing worked at the Government Code and Cipher School in Bletchley Park, England. This school was actually a covert intelligence agency charged with deciphering enemy communications. Throughout World War II, the Germans used a device called the Enigma machine to encode messages. It was a fairly simple device that generated a new cipher every day. This made decoding messages in a timely manner difficult. Turing aided in the construction of two code-breaking machines. The Victory, essentially a gigantic Enigma machine that could decipher codes far quicker than any human, and the Colossus, a programmable, digital, electronic apparatus that could solve math equations with lightning speed. It was, arguably, the world's very first computer. Turing's work was essential in delivering victory to the Allies, and he pioneered a number of concepts that would become essential in the field of computer science. The famous Turing test, in which participants anonymously communicate with AIs to determine whether or not they're human, was named after him. In addition to being a hero among codebreakers, Turing is generally regarded as the father of modern computing. He continued to build computers until his untimely death in 1954. and one such device was the ACE, or Automatic Computing Engine. It was on this device that Strachey initially ran his drafts program. Computers in the post-war period were archaic by today's standards, but they were rapidly improving. People like Strachey sought ways to expand the limits of what they could do. One possible avenue was games. There are approximately 25,000 possible moves in tic-tac-toe, 500 quintillion possible moves in checkers, or drafts, and the total number of possible moves in chess is greater than the total number of atoms in the observable universe. If a computer could play one of these games, could calculate the possible number of moves in a given situation, and determine which of those moves was best, that would prove that computers could, for lack of a better word, think. He first ran his program on a version of Turing's computer called the Pilot ACE, but the program failed when it overloaded the ACE's memory. That was in 1951. Strachey tried again in 1952 on the more powerful Manchester Mark I computer. This time, it worked, and what's more, he was able to create a visual representation of the game using the computer's CRT, or cathode ray tube, monitor. He even took photographs of this as evidence. Christopher Strachey's drafts is, therefore, the very first verifiable evidence of a game being played on a computer with the assistance of a video display. Strachey was not unique in trying to get computers to play games, and similar programming experiments took place all over the world. At Cambridge University, a doctoral candidate named Sandy Douglas used the university's EDSAC computer to run a version of tic-tac-toe called OXO, displaying the game board on a CRT monitor and having the player input commands with a rotary telephone dial. A similar game of tic-tac-toe, Birdie the Brain, was developed in Canada by Joseph Katz, an engineer at the Rogers Vacuum Tube Company. Birdie the Brain actually dates to 1950, making it older than drafts and probably the first instance of a computer successfully playing a game. But since the game board was displayed with an array of light bulbs rather than an actual monitor, its status as a video game is somewhat in question. Other possible claimants to the title of world's first video game are TuroChamp, a test program developed by Alan Turing that, while fully programmed, was far too complicated for any computer at the time to actually run. There was also the Ferranti Nimrod, a custom-built computer capable of playing the game Nim, wherein players take turns removing items from a set pile in hopes of forcing their opponent to make the last move. Nimrod was quite good at this, and even defeated the economic minister of West Germany during a demonstration. All of these were important developments in the history of computer science, but were they video games? The jury's still out on that one. There is one early program, however, that is almost universally regarded as a fully fledged video game. That program is 1958's Tennis for Two. Tennis for Two was the brainchild of physicist William Higinbotham, an employee at the Brookhaven National Laboratory on Long Island, New York. Brookhaven was, and is, operated by the U.S. Department of Energy, the governmental agency responsible for building and maintaining America's nuclear arsenal. The scientists at Brookhaven conducted research on nuclear power, as well as ways to defend against nuclear attacks. One such defense was advanced radar systems, capable of detecting incoming missiles from far away. Higginbotham's specialty was the oscilloscopic monitors used on those radar systems. An oscilloscope, if you didn't know, is a type of CRT monitor that visually represents electrical currents. Think of those wavy-lined monitors you sometimes see in old sci-fi movies. Every year around October, Brookhaven held an exhibition to show their work to the public and encourage young people to pursue careers in science and engineering. As might be expected from an institution working on such advanced technology, the displays tended to be esoteric and went over the heads of most visitors. Higinbotham wanted to make these expositions more exciting, and so he came up with the idea of modifying an oscilloscope into an amusement device. Supposedly, within a single afternoon, he had written the code for what would become Tennis for Two. The game is simple. Higinbotham designed it to look like a tennis match viewed from the side. It featured a single horizontal line to approximate the court, a short vertical line to approximate the net, and a movable point of light to approximate the ball. To play it, Higinbotham built a pair of custom controllers, featuring a button to send the ball flying and a knob to adjust the angle of the hit. The game had no sound and no color. It had no AI opponent and was strictly two-player. There wasn't even a way to keep score. Nevertheless, it was popular, and hundreds of people arrived at the exposition just to play it. A revised version, with a larger display and adjustable gravity mechanics, was presented again in 1959. Despite its popularity, Tennis for Two quickly faded from the public eye. Higinbotham and his colleagues merely saw it as a publicity tool, and after its 2 public appearances, the game was dismantled, its parts put to other uses. Higinbotham never sought to patent Tennis for Two or to commercially develop it, which, given the rarity and expense of computers at the time, was understandable. Indeed, Tennis for Two would largely be forgotten until it resurfaced 16 years later during the 1974 lawsuit between Magnavox and Atari. But that's a story for another time.